It's been very, very interesting. I found it, really a lot of it is fascinating, and again, pretty excited about the medical, right? Being able to, especially looking at a lot of the things that we're talking about. I think if we can get a medical environment, leveraging, that, looking at things like examining cancer, moles and things like that. I mean, it's a pretty exciting area.
Very good. Yes. No. Very
Yeah.
important. Well, you have the floor, and
Okay.
yes, looking forward to it.
Okay. Well, good. So I'm Stuart Phillips, and I'm a professional services manager, and I actually work quite a bit in the implementation of these type of things. So when we were talking about topics and discussion, what I thought I'd like to do is share my experience with some very large customers and what they're doing, and then where we've seen some success. So again, I'm the cybersecurity practice lead for professional services under personal systems. Personal systems is again, working more the commercial, it's actually the commercial side. So I work on the part of HP that sells to the, government and the car companies, not the Best Buy, And I work on what's called DAAS, which is Device as a Service, which is a service we pioneered, which is essentially a consumption model for devices. So instead of you buying a device, you would actually pay for consumption of it, how much you're using it, and we retain ownership of it, and then we maintain it, support it, things like that. And the great thing about DAAS is, again, you're paying by consumption. So if you have some users that are using your laptops a lot, some users are not using them at all, we can actually tune your usage and make your users a lot happier. It also works really well for like this life cycle. My focus within HP, again, is working with customers for very large deployments. And when we think about large deployments, we're talking about, someone who's buying 60,000 laptops and they're going to roll them out over the next 2 years. So very, very large customers. It's a kind of an exciting job because I do get to work with some of the biggest customers in the world at some of the largest, limits of deployment. And again, we also work on like updating devices, upgrading, maintaining, patching, all these types of things. And again, how to do that in a secure manner. So most of the work I do is workshop focused. Typically what we'll do is we'll spend a week with a customer. Used to do it on site, now we're virtual. We spend maybe 40 hours with a customer. We'll go through the entire project and we'll uncover a project plan. We're very big on the workshop format. If I get involved in a large customer and they're like, well, we have a meeting every week. I'm like, well, I'm not going to come to your meeting every week. I do workshops. I'm working full time. So again, in a lot of those weekly meeting things never go anywhere. So again, it just becomes a waste of time in a lot of cases. And those of you who went to weekly meetings this week may totally disagree with me, but I think there's some validity to that. Changes due to COVID. COVID has actually changed our customers a lot. Again, total, customers who are now, we're on premise are now working from home. If you've seen some of our numbers, we're selling tremendous numbers of laptops. We're selling, customers are not only getting laptops for their newly deployed users, people who had to work at home, but now people who are working at home 100% of the time have decided that they really want better laptops. So it's interesting in our product mix, we're actually selling the better systems, the elite books and things like that. And there's been a huge demand for these types of systems. IT systems, our customers, get a lot of criticism for the COVID environment, but until very recently, no one ever thought we'd ever be 100% from home, right? I mean, even if most users were remote, we'd still have a core infrastructure or core group that would maintain things, and that would be on premise. That has gone away, and so a lot of organizations are now really going through a lot of these changes, and it's becoming a real challenge to them. So when we talk about IT and what's going on, I talk to a customer and they're going to deploy 8,000 devices over the next year. And again, IT management is really fleet management when you actually get into it. it's a very functional job, right? You have to select your vendors, you have to select your devices, you have to select your tools. We're going to go with HP. We're going to get these types of PCs. We're going to have these 3 PCs available, and we're going to use these maintenance tools, and we're going to use Salesforce, and we're going to use Azure, and all these things that they have to decide. And then again, onboarding new users. And even today, onboarding of new users is very often a very poor experience, right? It's your first experience with the company. It takes them 2 weeks to get you a laptop. And when you get it, it's not your name, it's somebody else's name. Steve Phillips. Well, who's Steve Phillips? Oh, sorry. Okay, can you send it back? So again, it's been a real challenge for a lot of IT groups. And again, having to provide the reliable services, right? Everything you think about: web, email, printers, collaboration, data sharing, cloud, end user support, transition, device disposal, right? I mean, it's not unusual to go to a large shop and they have a drill press in the back and they use it to drill through laptop, hard drives. That's how they're doing device disposal, because, it's a very, poorly thought out system. And then, maintaining the existing devices, patching, OS migration, application rollout, and then of course, planning for the future, which, always seems to get really pushed, right? Because the future changes, but also, a lot of, the day-to-day fires are the things a lot of the IT groups have to deal with. So right here in the center, we have a diagram. This is the HP Lifecycle Services as part of DAAS. So again, this is what we will do for you: is discover, configure, deploy, optimize, maintain, dispose. So this is a managed service, right? So we sell a lot because we have a good reputation, and we are not a price leader, but we do, again, from a service point of view, we do a lot. So, and the way that a lot of these devices are sold, in case you're not familiar with this, is kind of on a $1 monthly fee, $52 per device per month. And for that, I get HP Lifecycle Services. But if you don't want them, you can do this for $48 per device per month. So a lot of the times, I think you'll notice in this diagram, there's no security, right? Security doesn't really show up in here. And very often I'm not involved in the security discussion with the customer during the purchase cycle, right? They will purchase these devices, and very often that'll be through the purchasing department. It'll be done, the issues around credit and, things like that, and financing. And when the devices come in, that's when typically I'll get involved a lot with the customer and their security group. But again, for a lot of these decisions, this isn't, security still remains not a significant concern. I mean, it's not there are some devices they won't buy because they can't, right? We can't, we have a government customer, they can't buy laptops that are made in China. That's pretty straightforward, but they buy the laptops that are made in Texas. It's exactly the same laptop, it just has a little TX on it. So, that's fine. And then, if you're an IT manager looking at scoring, and by scoring, I mean, like, how do your boss, how do your executives, or how do they feel about you? The 2 main things that we're told is, number 1 is budget by far. You can't go over budget, you can't blow out your budget, you need to stay within your budget. And then user satisfaction. And user satisfaction if it's company affecting, right? So you hate our, customer care application, that's, your opinion. You hate our customer care application and you can't enter orders, and we're actually backlogged and we're going to miss our numbers, then that's a really big deal, right? That's actually something that I will address. But if you tell me you just don't like using Outlook, I'm just going to say thank you for sharing. So again, a lot of it is just, how does this affect the company? And again, how do I maintain the budget? So it's a lot harder to, very often the security guys will get affected by, having a breach, and that will unfortunately cause a regime change. Whereas IT groups tend to stay a lot longer, especially because they're a little bit less, typically not as high up in the organization. And they'll typically stay, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So they'll be there a while. So COVID has really changed a lot of these things, because again, most of our, customers were operating on the idea that their tools and policies assume the user was on premise or on network. or had easy access to the premise, right? You know, we built out a VPN system, no problem. It's designed to support no more than 10% of all of our users at the same time. Well, now everybody's at home and the VPN system is massively overstretched. And if you're not using, you know, cloud elastic type systems, it can be very, very difficult to, you know, get these going. And just like calling the, you know, the furnace guy when it's snowing, you know, the vendors are very, very busy, you know, and very challenging for them to actually be able to deliver services. So again, when you talk to an IT manager, you know, they're really looking at the big picture, right? They have a lot of devices out there. It's an ongoing thing. They're trying to manage their budget. They're trying to keep users happy to a degree. And now COVID has come along and really upset, you know, a lot of the issues that we've had. So, you know, when I'm typically talking to customers and we're talking about a lot of these things, we talk about IT, cybersecurity teams working together. Again, one of the things that I really push the cybersecurity teams to do is come to the table with something that the IT guys actually care about, right? I mean, I go to a lot of meetings where the cyber guy comes in, presents, leaves, and the IT guys are sitting around the table going, well, I don't care about that, you know, write it down or make an email or something. Tell them we met with them and that we were taking it under advisement, right? But honestly, they, you know, not really an issue. So again, you have to come into the table. You have to, you know, look at it as a win-win approach. You know, again, how do we make an improvement? How do we make a solid change? How do we actually improve the organization? And our organization, professional services, we're very focused on execution. A huge percentage of IT projects are failures. I'm not sure the numbers, everybody sort of fudges them around, but you know, 3 out of 4 projects is a, you know, at least a substantial failure. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Mostly they're overscoped, you know, they're way too big and things like that. That's what we see all the time. We actually get involved with customers a lot once they've had issues and they want to regroup, and we'll come back in. And again, we very much focus on execution. My team is very proud of our very high success rate. But again, our goal is to workshop the problem, maintain a very strict scope, and then just focus on the execution, getting it done. You know, we don't tend to do a lot of like ongoing forever type of consulting because, again, a lot of our customers have their own, you know, large consulting vendors or PwC or people that they deal with for stuff like that. We typically come in and just help them with real big problems. You know, you have 8,000 devices, half of them are on Windows 7. How do I migrate half of them from Windows 7 to Windows 10? And how do I back up all, you know, so again, the whole thing. So we typically work in a very project-oriented thing. The other thing, you know, saying to cyber guys is don't come in with just a bunch of unfunded mandates, right? Don't come in and say, hey, you're running Windows 7, it's no longer patched, you have to update all those. And again, one of the things you're doing as an IT manager is really looking at the budget. So you say, look, I have these devices. I know I'm going to replace them in a year. When I replace them, we'll get Windows 10. So why don't I just delay this whole thing for a year? And, you know, in a year from now, we'll get Windows 10 devices, start rolling those out, and that'll solve the problem. And, you know, get into an argument about like, well, no, you can't wait a year. And it's like, well, they go back and say, well, are you going to give me money to do this? And the answer, if the answer is no, then they, you know, it's very challenging for them to do it because there's not this endless budget. And the one thing I always say to my cyber brethren, and I'm really bad about this too, is stop just being focused on the cool and the new, right? You know, don't, you know, talking about it, there's a lot of cool things out there, a lot of new things out there. But a lot of those are really not important to the IT guy, right? That really cool thing you saw at Black Hat, this really cool technology you heard about, and especially like things like AI and stuff like that, because they just look at you and go, well, that sounds great. Now, are we done? Because, you know, I got to go update some printer drivers. So, you know, again, so, you know, cyber has to come to the table to partner with IT to focus on things that IT cares about. And again, in a win-win approach. So again, partnership works well. Where we've had a lot of success is working with IT to close holes, that build a better foundation, right? So a lot of things in the organization need fixing. And again, you need to be able to target this by helping IT. So, starting a conversation with, I thought of a way to save you money, right? I thought of a way to make users happier. And again, these are typically low-hanging fruit. So there's a lot of really cool AI and automation projects out there, but the ones that we've seen been really successful are really relatively low-level tier 1, tier 2 support issues, right? So, the question becomes, what are your top tier 1 and tier 2 support issues? So, things like password resets. A lot of tier 1 is just sitting there, people calling up and saying, hey, my password doesn't work, can you reset it? And I've done that job many years ago. It was a very boring job. And a lot of IT groups will have more trouble keeping tier 1 guys than they will tier 4 guys, because you just get bored, right? And it's just frustrating. And, things like, system scans for invalid application. I want to push deletion and replacement, right? I want to update, check all the printers for vulnerabilities, but I can't take the printers offline. I need to look at that. Or how do I know when I need to back up the data to protect against ransomware? I mean, these seem like pretty basic type things, but they're really critical, right? I mean, being able to call the help desk and saying, hi, I'm Stuart Phillips, VP of engineering. I need you to reset my password, and, bullying the person on the phone. It's a very, it's a big, social engineering hack. Where the automation and AI really get into this is scale becomes the issue, right? So we had a customer, had about 4,000 devices, and we did a system scan. It's just sort of like a first level set. We got a list from SANS. I think it's 10 most pirated applications, or applications that shouldn't be running on business systems. So, you have malware bytes. I really like malware bytes, but if you run it on your company systems, you really should buy a license for it, right? That's in the license. That's pretty straightforward. So again, and it's technically considered piracy because it is. We did scan 4,000 systems. We found 23,000 violations. So scale becomes the issue, because how do you then turn around and say, well, I'm going to send 23,000 emails to the user, and assuming they don't ignore it, because we've been telling them to ignore these types of emails, and assuming that they know what the application is, and assuming that they know how to delete it, what happens when they come back and say, no, I really need this application because I use it to do all my presentations, or I need this, I need that. So again, it just becomes a really untenable problem. And again, looking at staffing and these types of issues, again, the challenge, like, what do I do with this information? I want to check my printers. Okay, you have a lot more printers than you thought, because a lot of people have printers on their desk. Do I count those, or do I just decide I don't care about those? And again, so again, where AI and automation, we've seen a lot of success, is really trying to address these types of challenges, where this is a real definable problem, where we can bring these tools and expertise into the issue and be able to address them at scale. Because if I'm using an automated tool to scan the systems, it can continually scan them and continually gather information, continually make recommendations, continually do that. And it can do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Whereas, a lot of times you'll do these really, really big scans, and they'll turn around and go, you know what, we're never going to do this again. Or we'll do it again in 6 months. Hopefully the problem will have gone away. So again, when we talk about these things, password resets, right? Call up and say, hey, my password doesn't work. This is my email address. Can you reset it? This is really important. I really need to do that, And again, you challenge it. First off, it's multiple systems. It's a huge social engineering target, and it's a really boring job. You just sit there all day. People call. They don't know their email address. They don't, whatever. They're having all these problems. You reset it for them. They call back in 10 minutes. Hey, that didn't work. It's frustrating. And it's a cost center for IT, right? It costs them quite a bit. So what IT needs is really a self-service portal for password resets with an easy-to-use UI, right? And again, they want to reduce the costs of doing this and again, make their users happy, right? I don't have to wait, I have a problem Friday night. I don't have to wait till Monday to reset my password, or I don't have to try and call somebody in the middle of the night overseas, things like that. And again, we want to think of it as win-win, right? So if I'm the cyber person, I really care about this. This is a cyber hole. I worry about, social engineering. I want to know how many resets we have. If we're doing 130 resets a day and we have 23 employees, right, that would be weird. If we're doing resets and 90% of reset requests are for people who are system administrators, who have system administrator in their title on LinkedIn, that's interesting, right? There's a lot of really useful information here. So again, the idea is to work with IT, again, work with them to reduce the costs, right? Shorten the downtime, help that, improve the morale of their team. But again, get what we want. We want to close this hole. We want to get some information. So we're really, really big on the workshop format, right? We very much want you to workshop the program. And if you don't want to do a workshop, we typically don't, we don't accept the job, because very often those projects will just run on forever and never be successful. And again, we're not, we typically sell blocks of time. So, typically what we want to do, we want to get everybody, all the relevant parties together. We'll do one and done, 1 week, 40 hours or, whatever. And we used to lock everybody in a room. We can't do that anymore, but now it's virtual. We try and do the best we can. We workflow, you map the whole thing, right? What would people do? How would it do it? And then we agree and get agreement on the concepts and deliverables. And the best part of a workshop is to finish with a plan where all the parties are enrolled with mutual success. Now, that is not easy. It's very, very difficult. And again, if we do a workshop and we find people at real loggerheads, or there's really no agreement, or there's just really a lot of issues internally, very often we will not continue with the project because we don't feel that, the customer will get value for their money, right? We're quite busy, but also we don't want to waste the customer's time. We don't want to waste the customer's money, because again, we want to provide the best value for the customer. So again, we want to do a workshop format. We typically run the whole thing. We're very big on doing the workshop. We typically, a lot of times, don't do the implementation. We might do some project management for you. But again, very often this can be outsourced or done. We can help you with the outsourcing and things like that. But typically, there are a lot of ways to do this locally and, at less cost. But again, getting that final plan where everybody leaves feeling that they got what they want, and that they are enrolled in this success, right? They will be successful if the plan is successful. You don't want people to say, I feel like I'm cheated and I'm going to go back and sabotage this. And again, that's why a lot of projects are just unsuccessful. Okay. And again, where cyber expertise is critical, right, is because you need to make a valid application. And this is really, where we, the cyber people really, we add the value, right? So again, how do I make a password reset system with a security score that's valid, right? And what is going to make a valid security score, right? Are you employed, right? I have one customer that when people were terminated, they were terminated in the HR system. There was a message sent to block their account, but it turned out that user could call IT and get it turned back on, and it would take about 48 hours for the system to go through. And so we found a real hole there. And that was one of the things we found in the workshop was like, well, how do you actually know that they're employed here? How do you know if they've resigned? How do you know that they're on a program, or they're, and also like, what is their user role? Because again, system admins, people in human resources, people in accounts payable are targeted much, much more than regular users. So again, I want to flag those differently. And again, what about the device? Is it a company device? Was the computer marked as lost? Someone calls and says, hey, I need a reset on this PC. And something should tell you that it's been reported lost or reported stolen, right? And again, time and location. Time and location used to be a really big thing, and it still is, right? For logins, if you logged in 10 minutes ago from Texas, and then you log in tonight from Latvia, then I care a lot about that. But used to be you were on premise, and a lot of times you're not now. So again, that becomes an issue. And again, looking at this, what are the actions you want to trigger? Well, I'm going to say, well, I'm going to create this valid security score. I'm going to allow the user to just reset their password. That's fine. Or I want to trigger a secondary challenge. I want to do a two-factor, right? I'm going to call their phone, and I'm going to have them type in something or say something, or just use the two-factor ping ID or whatever they're using. And again, it's a lot of times this is customer maturity, right? If they don't have two-factor set up, we don't want to grow the scope of the project to say, oh, well, let's do two-factor. You should have two-factor, which is true. But adding it to this project just makes everything, really increases the chance it's going to fail. So again, and then, when do I fail? Why do I say, I'm not going to do this? Do I just send them an email saying you can't do this way, or send them a text, or do I refer you to a human analyst? Do I go to a tier 2 analyst at that point? And again, also, what do we do if we actually believe that somebody's trying to hack us, right? I got 24,000 requests for password resets in the last 2 minutes. Well, bad, right? So again, and then the most important thing, I think, is really when cyber comes to the table, you have to be available on an ongoing basis, right? So, here we put the system in, it works fine for 2 months, and then all of a sudden we're, refusing 90% of all requests, and we don't know why. I can't go back, if I'm the IT person, I can't go back to cyber support and say, can you help me with this? And they say, oh yeah, well, we have a bunch of projects and we're behind, and so-and-so left, so next year? So again, you have to be available, you have to be able to commit resources in the future to review this, and then again, be able to say, we gathered this information, this is what we got out of it. Because what I really want to do is go to my boss and say, hey, I got all this cool information on password resets. We're obviously being hacked from this group. What I want to do is I want to make these changes, and here's a bunch of things that we can do. So again, you have to, apply your expertise, build it out, but you still have to be available at the end. So that is my last slide, and I hope I'm not too over on time.
No, that's great. I think there's some nice comments. Well, one of them actually says they love the turn the permissions back on through a phone call exploit. I don't think you did that to encourage people, but I think that's certainly a big problem if it's widespread.
Yeah, I think that we have when we get involved, I mean, we're very focused on the success of the project, right? I mean, we try and box it properly, we try and scope it properly, and we try to take that's why the workshop approach we find to be the most important. But at the same time, it has to bring value to the organization, and it has to be something that both IT and cyber care about in a lot of these ways, right? Mm. You can't go to IT and say, you have to buy this really, really cool password checker tool and put it in, and you have to buy it, and you have to implement it, and you have to staff it. And it just doesn't work, right? It just ends up not being done.
And why do you think, you mentioned before, cyber will just rock up and say, this is needed or that's needed, and then IT will disregard it almost. Is that a culture clash, or is that going to change?
Yeah, I actually have customers where the cyber guys and the IT guys won't go to the same meeting.
Oh.
Right. Well, because they compete for headcount, they compete for budget, they compete for importance within the organization. They create, cyber wants to make a decision. Are we going to buy, are we going to use Teams, or are we going to use Zoom? Well, Zoom has this problem, this problem, this problem. Yeah, but Zoom's half the price, man. And then, there's a lot of challenges. But again, that's one point I'm trying to make, is that a lot of the drivers for the IT organization are around budget and the organizational satisfaction, Whereas cyber, again, is a lot very often, the security of the organization and, the validity, and very often the validity of our organization, but a lot of times those are a lot harder to measure, right? I've literally been to meetings where they said, we've never been hacked. I don't know why we spend all this money on this stuff. And I'm like, that's like saying I have medical insurance, but I've never really had to go to the doctor. Probably a waste of money, right? It's not. And again, it's just that mentality. And we've been waiting for this. I've been doing this since like the early, 1990. And that comment about, well, this is, this IT's they got to realize that cyber is not a cost center. Yeah, I'm still not seeing that. I'm still going to meetings where they're going, well, we're still paying the security tax on your product, and it's like, well, do you like hackers? Or, what do you want, but I do think that the small attainable goals of we're trying to bring in automation, and again, you're not trying to, developers will say, cupcakes, not wedding cakes, right? Small projects that really show the value of a lot of these things and that build the trust of the IT department, I think are, where we've seen our customers are most amount of success. And a lot of it is just, partnering with them and being able to help them out.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
And we got Keith in the audience. Keith's up in a little bit. He says, "Thank you, Stuart. Lots of great practical support as security automation evolves."
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for sharing. I'm here in Denver, and so if anybody like to chat, I'd be very happy to conversation and anything. I think my information's on LinkedIn, but again, Stuart.Phillips@hp.com. Very happy to talk about this and anything you want. But thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to share my experience.
My pleasure.